Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some absolutely fascinating case studies compiled by the Australian workplace discrimination representatives. We're going to take a true crime-style look at the modern workplace, specifically looking at exactly where the legal line gets drawn on workplace misconduct. You know, we hear the excuse of workplace banter all the time, right? But the legal reality of what actually constitutes a fireable offense is completely eye-opening.
So, let's kick things off with the ultimate question. When does standard joking around at work cross that line into justifiable termination? It's a massive gray area that trips up thousands of employees and employers every single year. We're going to unpack 3 shocking real-world cases that test the absolute limits of acceptable behavior.
Listen to this for a second. Why are you getting offended? It's just a picture of my balls. No way, right? But yes, you heard that correctly. That is an actual, real-world quote from a London police officer trying to defend a deeply inappropriate photo he left on a colleague's phone. How does someone even attempt to defend that with a straight face? Well, let's unpack the incredible stories behind these dismissals.
Case number 1. The Jetstar Mechanics Tirade, or when blue-collar banter crosses the line.
This one takes us back to 2023. We've got Nathan Woods, a Jetstar maintenance engineer in New South Wales, who insisted his extreme language was just normal banter. But an investigation uncovered a much darker picture. Woods had actually publicly stereotyped residents of Fairfield as being responsible for spreading COVID because, in his words, they pretend they cannot speak English. He also told a colleague of Filipino descent that his smile reminded him of the Bali bomber. And if that wasn't enough, he repeatedly directed extreme profanity at junior staff, literally calling them dumb C-words just for asking standard technical questions about aircraft parts.
But wait, it gets worse, because Wood's misconduct wasn't just verbal. He completely failed at his actual job as a supervisor by hiding his own subordinates' egregious behavior. This subordinate, Christian Troyak, was regularly exposing an erection at work and making absolutely horrific anti-Semitic gas chamber jokes. Woods totally ignored all of this. He only decided to report it months later when Troyak filed a bullying complaint against him. The commission noted this was a super calculated attempt to just undermine his accuser.
What's really interesting here is the massive disconnect between the excuses Woods made and what the Fair Work Commission actually found. Woods kept leaning heavily on his 14-year clean record and the whole blue-collar culture defense, but the commission officially ruled his responses were disingenuous and obfuscatory. Even more importantly, they ruled that aggressively cursing at junior staff wasn't just mean, it created a dangerous, objective safety risk. Why? Because it actively discouraged junior mechanics from seeking technical guidance on aircraft. That is a massive safety hazard.
Case number 2. London's worst police officers, a culture of extreme disrespect.
Jumping over to some cases from 2025, we have 2 London Metropolitan Police officers who built up a truly shocking rap sheet. If you thought the airline mechanic was out of line, wait until you see what happens when the people tasked with upholding the law break pretty much all the rules of human decency. You have Officer Wayne Sansom, who literally stood on his tiptoes to pass wind just 10 to 15 centimeters from a female colleague's face. Then you have Officer Ben Jeffries, the guy behind our opening quote, who borrowed a colleague's phone to use Apple Pay for water and decided to leave a photograph of his testicles in her camera roll. But it went way beyond crude physical acts into severe discriminatory harassment, including homophobic slurs, anti-Romanian bias, and Jeffries physically mocking a black colleague while chanting Black Lives Matter.
Unsurprisingly, both of these guys were fired and permanently barred from the force. The employment tribunal's strict ruling highlighted that Sansom's aggressive sexual comments, like telling a female colleague, "I would put my dick in you," and Jeffrey's racially motivated mockery proved these acts were completely, legally indefensible. They created an intolerable, hostile environment that absolutely no employee should ever have to endure.
All right, case number 3, the Michael Jackson impersonator, a decade of unusual sounds. This case study is just bizarre. We're looking at Lucas Zawaski, a cooperative group warehouse worker. His decade of continuous employment came to a screeching halt over something you rarely ever see in a human resources file: unusual sounds. Zawaski faced summary termination for serious misconduct after a colleague lodged a formal complaint. The complaint alleged that for roughly 2 years, Zawaski had been wandering the warehouse floor making what were described as high-pitched Michael Jackson hee-hee noises right alongside constant, grunting, orgasmic moans. The colleague also alleged Zawaski made racist monkey noises. Now, Zawaski admitted to the moaning, but strictly denied any racist intent or monkey noises.
Now this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate legal twist of our explainer. On one hand, the employer fired him right on the spot, citing a strict zero-tolerance policy. But on the other hand, the tribunal looked at the actual reality. There was zero CCTV proof of the absolute worst allegation, the racist noises. Plus, Zawadzki had a spotless 10-year record, had never received a single warning about his behavior, and shockingly, had never even been given a copy of that zero-tolerance policy in the first place.
So, because his dismissal was procedurally flawed, look at this jaw-dropping number. Despite his highly unusual, totally juvenile behavior, Zawadzki was awarded £8,541. That's around 16,000 Australian dollars for unfair dismissal. And get this, that was even after the tribunal applied a 50% reduction to the payout because of his own blameworthy conduct. Procedural fairness really matters, folks.
Part 4. The rules of dismissals and the harsh legal realities.
Let's pivot from these dramatic cases into the concrete legal lessons. How do these wild stories actually protect you or warn you in your everyday professional life? Does the classic excuse of blue-collar banter actually protect an employee from termination when things go too far?
Well, the crucial legal distinction comes down to targeted versus general banter. The Fair Work Commission says, look, general swearing, like cursing when you drop a heavy wrench, might be tolerated in certain workplace cultures. But aggressively targeted abuse, that is entirely different. The Commission views targeted denigration, especially coming from a supervisor, as a severe workplace hazard. It breaches health and safety because it literally stops staff from reporting errors or asking for help.
There's another massive takeaway here, and it's all about contrition. Honest remorse can literally save your job. Remember Christian Troyak, the subordinate from the Jetstar case who made those terrible jokes? He actually kept his job because he showed genuine remorse and honesty during the investigation. Meanwhile, his supervisor, Woods, was fired because his disingenuous excuses and total lack of honesty irreparably damaged the employment relationship.
Part 5. Fighting for your rights. The AWDR safety net.
Navigating these kinds of disputes is, quite frankly, a giant puzzle. It's incredibly complex, which is exactly why everyday employees need a solid safety net if they ever find themselves dealing with a toxic workplace, an unfair dismissal, or adverse action. The AWDR advantage is super clear. They're Australia's leading non-lawyer workplace specialists. With over 30 years of experience, they've supported more than 16,000 clients nationwide. They provide powerful advocacy driven by a strict social justice agenda, standing up for workers when employers fail them. And incredibly, their phones are answered 24/7 by real humans right here in Australia.
So, if you ever need help, the steps are clear. Step 1. Do not suffer in silence. Step 2 is absolutely critical. You must act fast. There's a strict 21-day deadline for most fair work claims. If you miss it, you miss out on justice. Step 3. Call AWDR at 1-800-333-666 for a free confidential consultation. They are ready to listen to your side of the story and fight for the compensation you deserve.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on today. Based on the wild and legally complex cases we've just seen, are you letting illegal workplace behavior slide, or are you ready to demand a fair go? Remember, everyone absolutely deserves a fair, respectful, and safe professional environment. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and remember, always know your rights.